Hi again. Welcome to session 4, which is our culture building through intellectual prep session. I will be walking you through how to use most of this session time. So this video will not be 80 minutes long, but I want to talk through some of the curriculum pieces, and then you'll have a lot of work time during this session. So first we'll review our session objectives, then I will go through an overview of the campus curriculum, and then for the remainder of the session you will be deep diving into the curriculum and then completing your session reflection form. So our objectives are for you to be able to describe what activities make up a typical day in campus and how these activities achieve the goals of the campus program. You should be able to explain how the curriculum materials provided by Girls Who Code will help you achieve your classroom vision. You'll also review lesson plans and curriculum materials for the first week of your campus course. And then you'll determine and begin taking next steps to prepare for teaching campus this summer. So before we jump in, I would love for you to pause the video and just reread through the campus goals and curriculum rationale. And while you're reading, think about what activities are described in the rationale and how do these activities align to the goals of the campus program. So go ahead and pause and read. Great. Okay, so with that framing in mind, let's dive into the curriculum. So campus curriculum is organized into 2 units. The first unit is where girls are focused on language and programming fundamentals. So they learn essential CS concepts like variables, loops, functions, and conditionals in the programming language for their course. They build daily projects to practice applying concepts, and they also participate in exploration and unplugged activities to learn these concepts. In week 2, girls are focused on a capstone project, so they work together as a team to brainstorm, plan, design, build, and pitch one final project together. They also will be participating in a campus field trip, something that's new this year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in our logistics session later. And while they're building their team projects, they will be practicing software engineering project management skills like Scrum, Agile, and Kanban. So as I'm going through this session, you can open up a copy of the slides and click through, or you can wait until this video is over and then click through and be able to see some of these examples. A lot of these images are clickable and you're able to see them. So the first thing is that all of the lesson plans can be found inside the Instructor Toolkit on HQ. We will be getting a icon refresh before programs launch, but we haven't seen them yet, so the icons might look a little bit different for you, but you'll be able to find them here. And then each lesson plan has some important pieces of information at the very beginning. So there's 2 slides at the beginning that you don't project for students, but they're high-level information that's very helpful for you as a teacher. So it includes an overview of the lesson, the agenda for the day that you should write on the board, so that girls have an understanding of what they'll be working on. It includes the lesson objectives, which we also recommend writing on the board or posting for students. The evidence for how students have achieved learning objectives. This is what you're looking for as a teacher to see, did we meet them? On the second slide, you'll find a nice handy list of materials and links to important documents to help you throughout the day, including we've created a Spotify playlist that you can play during work time. You'll see new vocabulary, which we also encourage you to write on the board as a reference for students. Some teachers like to add new vocabulary words, so it might be that you use poster paper, and each day you kind of like add on to it. You might need a few sheets of poster paper. And then there's also a section that talks about ways that you might differentiate or customize the lesson. In the customization section, we try to point out where, if you're running short on time, what you might cut, or if you have extra time, some things that you might do. And then there's another checklist that says, with reminders of things that you should do before the lesson. This always includes things like reviewing the slides, making sure you've built the project for the day before you're teaching, and updating the board with agenda objectives and vocabulary. The other thing, before I move on, that I will point out about a lesson plan, I'll go ahead and open one up really quickly, is that in the notes section, or this facilitator notes, you will find a series of teacher and student actions. And once it's done being slow about loading, you'll be able to see this. So I'm just going to jump down to a later slide. So for example, in this sisterhood activity, which is the beach ball icebreaker activity, you'll see the actions about how you should run this activity, any handy links, and then what students will be doing during this time as well. I highly recommend that you skim through this before teaching the lesson. It's a great way to feel comfortable with what you'll be doing that day. A lot of times we also try to make sure that the slide instructions are clear enough that if you don't remember what was in these teacher and student actions, you are able to kind of like go off of what is on the slides. All right, so we will come back over to the present mode. And keep going along. So in week 1, there are a couple of core activities just across all of the curriculums. First, there's the day always starts with a daily overview where you review the objectives, agenda, and any feedback that students gave you during daily feedback that you want to address that day. You always will do a sisterhood activity in the morning. These are usually like 10 to 15 minutes long. There's a few days where they might be a little bit longer, but these are super important for building classroom culture. You'll also often have an intro or an exploration activity that introduces concepts for the day. You'll have a Women in Tech Spotlight. And then most days there's a daily project that will include code-alongs. You learned about code-alongs in an earlier session. There's a project showcase where girls get to share out and showcase their work. And then a daily wrap-up is how we end every day, with a little bit of joy. So we review the objectives, girls journal and reflect, they take the end of day survey, and then this year we want all teachers in classrooms to do shout outs and an optional daily photo challenge, which we'll talk more about later. So we already saw one example of a sisterhood activity, but for each activity in the campus curriculum, girls will have access and you will have access to instructions on HQ, and these instructions match what you see here in the slides. So that way, if for some reason your board isn't working, girls can always reference and follow along with what's on the slides, or maybe just with the layout of the room, they have a harder time seeing the board. I'm a strong believer in giving kids access to information in multiple formats and multiple ways. As I mentioned, we'll always have intro activities. Again, these also align with the slides in HQ and also with your teacher guide. So if you have, which we'll see an example of in a little bit, but if you are leading a coding activity, like this example is an intro to Swift, there will be a teacher guide that you'll have printed out, so that way if you want to be not tethered to your computer but still giving instructions and leading a code along, you'll be able to do that a little bit more easily. As I mentioned, we have Women in Tech Spotlights. The videos are always embedded in the slides, but if for some reason something is going on, you can also play them via HQ, and girls can go back and access them as well. On HQ, there will be a lot of linked resources for girls to kind of explore and learn more about these women and their work. As I mentioned, each day there will be a daily project, so girls have access and you have access to instructions in HQ. You use those instructions to complete your pre-work. And then there will be instructions on the slides. They're not as detailed, but they kind of guide you with timings of which parts of the project you might be working on and how long you should spend on each part as kind of like guidepost reminders for you during that building time. And then as I mentioned, something that we did new this year based on teacher feedback is we've created teacher guides, and this is what one looks like. I'm going to actually click and open it up. The idea behind teacher guides is you'll have this printed out, you'll be able to walk around the room and have a student maybe modeling or plugged in and demoing or leading the code along with your instructions. So you're the navigator and they're the driver, and then all the other students are following along with you. It also just has great helpful information for each activity, like vocabulary, kind of what the outline is, if there's any exemplar code that is shown on the teacher guide as well. And then for each part of the project or the activity, we include checks for understanding. And when applicable, we also include a list of like common misconceptions. So places where we think students might get stuck and might need some extra help. And then there's also places for you to take notes about the things that you might be seeing, which might be helpful, especially as it's a long day. If you are pausing and taking a break or stopping for lunch, you could be looking over your notes just as a reminder about where you were at and the things you were saying and you want to address when you come back together as a class. So here's an example of some common misconceptions that are for this particular activity. So hopefully this will be a really useful resource for you as you're leading coding instruction in the classroom this summer. All right. Don't want captions, just want to expand. So that's the daily project. Some curriculums, especially in iPhone 2, some projects extend over multiple days because they're more complex. And it's also okay if you don't finish your project in a day and you need to take extra time on another day or cut something short. That's totally fine for you to do as an instructor. The next piece that I mentioned was the project showcase. So every day we want girls to have a chance to share out their work and celebrate each other. It's a great way to set things up for the shout outs at the end of the day. The big thing here is to make sure that students are being respectful and kind. You can kind of change up the format of this. We have a suggested format, but do things that work for you in your classroom. And then in the daily wrap-up, as I mentioned, there will be journal reflections, daily shout-outs, so you'll want to find a space in your room that's the shout-out wall, where girls can write shout-outs for themselves and for each other, and we encourage you to participate in this. An important part of the end of day or the daily wrap-up activities is for students to complete the daily feedback form. That is linked on HQ for them to complete. It is something that you will use as a teacher. You'll review their daily feedback so that you can make plans and changes for the next day of campus. And we also read the feedback to consider changes we might make to the curriculum and ways that we might support you and students better. So it's super important that that's completed every day. So in terms of week 2, there's a variety of activities that are common across the curriculums, and those are listed here. I'm not going to read through all of them. The first one that I'll talk about, though, is team roles. So we, as students work in teams in the second week, we encourage them each to take on one or more team roles, and we give some suggested roles. You can always add additional roles, or girls, if they have additional role ideas that they want to include, that's totally fine. But we provide some guidance on HQ and in the slides for you to structure that the capstone project teams. Each girl will do goal setting for the week about what their role is, what they hope to learn, and kind of like the progress they're making. The format for goal setting is different based on the curriculum. So in the intro course, they might make a scratch project. In the iPhone course, they might make a storyboard. They can also do this via Google Slides or Prezi. There's a lot of flexibility here in how you do it. But on the main building days, so day 6, day 8, and 9, they do some goal setting and goal reflection. There's also some structured brainstorming activities that students will use to come up with their project ideas. And again, those resources are in the slides and on HQ for you and the students. I mentioned that they use real software development practices like Scrum and Kanban. So we encourage you and your students to create either digital or physical Kanban boards where they track the things that they need to do, that they're currently doing, and that they've completed. And kind of starting each day with a stand-up meeting so that they can talk about what they have been working on and what they need to do and update the board, and then ending each day updating the board as well and kind of debriefing what they've accomplished. During development time, there are also reminders about what they should be doing and kind of the best practices of using that time effectively on the slides and in HQ. And then on several days, they will be testing their projects or their works in progress. It's not that their projects need to be perfect or ready, but it's important to iterate as they're going through the cycle more frequently. So we provide some structure for how you might do product testing and get feedback and give feedback to other teams. I really encourage you to do testing at least one time during the second week, but the more the better, because it can also just spark ideas between different teams. On the last day of the program, we have demo day, and we encourage you to invite parents to attend demo day, and family members and friends. This is where girls they'll reflect on kind of the arc of their project, like what they achieved, what they wish they could have done. They'll put together like a poster and a presentation, and then they will present their projects to the group, and there will be like a demo, and it's a nice way to celebrate their work. All right, so now you are going to deep dive into the curriculum, and I encourage you to review the materials for days 1 to 3 on HQ. Look through the slides and the activity instructions, and then complete the note catcher in your workbook for at least days 1 to 3. While you're doing that, you want to think about these different questions below. So what are the big goals or topics for the day? What activities do you think help build a collaborative and supportive culture for this day? And where else could you emphasize positive culture that day? What project are girls building? What parts of the project do you think might be challenging? Are there any special preps or things you need to do for that day? What are some teaching tools, techniques, or strategies you think you might need to use that day? Will today include a code along? Do you think a code brainstorm could be useful? List 2 to 3 you think you'll use most often. What are you most excited about, and what questions about the day do you still have? You can always complete this note catcher for more than 3 days if you'd like. And once you're done with that, go ahead and complete your session reflection form. Thank you.